University of Maryland Medical System. I am the Senior VP for Government and Community Health. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here this afternoon to our Not All Wounds Are Visible community conversation webinar on mental health. This is our third in a series since just last Thursday, specifically related to mental health and COVID-19. Last week, we had the opportunity to speak generally about safeguarding your mental health during this coronavirus pandemic. On Tuesday, we addressed ways to help children, all of those in our lives, cope with stresses and the circumstances that COVID-19 may present. Today, we're going to focus in on the impact of isolation that many may be experiencing as a result of the pandemic emergency declarations and the stay-at-home orders. Given this most unusual time throughout this series, a few common themes have developed, including, but certainly not limited to, being sure to establish a routine for yourself as the days go by, being conscious of the news and the amount of news and its impact on you that you're taking in, making a special effort to partake in activities that bring you joy, working, sharing, giving, and creating for the benefit of others, and importantly, staying in touch with people you love. And that's critical for today's conversation. We are joined today by Wanda Binns, who will talk to us about the impact of isolation on your mental well-being and how to overcome it. Wanda holds an advanced level clinical-based license as a clinical social worker and has over 30 years of experience in this field. She has particular expertise dealing with relationships, addiction, stress, and depression. All of these are important for today's discussion. And she manages the Employee Assistance Program for all of the employees at the University of Maryland Medical System. At the conclusion of her presentation, we'll share a few resources that we hope will be of value to you. And we'll be able to take some questions that you may have. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to write it in the Q&A box, and we'll try to take up as many of those as we can at the end. Before we get started, let me pop up a slide and say one last thing to you. Presentation will provide general wellness information and tips. It's not intended as a substitute for medical or mental health advice. Should you deem yourself in need of additional assistance, please contact your healthcare provider for specific guidance or recommendations. We also have a website that we've made available to anyone who wants to access it, and that's ums.org/coronavirus. It has a great deal of information. We'll give you that website again before we conclude today. All right, with that, Wanda, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is well, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to participate in this afternoon's webinar. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So we're talking about the impact of isolation during the coronavirus, and it's very hard to understand how much social distancing can impact how we cope emotionally. Right now, we're being required to social distance, and some of us are even being self-imposed to quarantine because you may have been exposed. And obviously, the purpose for the social distancing is to hopefully to flatten the curve of the coronavirus. The extended isolation impacts people very differently. And there are some people, if you live with a family and you're with your family during the virus, you're going to cope one way. But if you live independently, it's going to cope you a different way, not right or wrong, just very different. And the other thing to keep in mind, our coping mechanisms are going to be dependent upon how emotionally healthy we were before this virus ever started. But because we're all forced to stay at home and practice safe distancing, it just makes it a little bit more complicated. As human beings, we're wired to be social creatures. And we need to connect with others for our emotional well-being, which is why for so many people it's extremely hard if you're living by yourself, or especially if you're a senior and you have some physical limitations, to be forced to be, excuse me, to stay inside and not to have the ability to go out and do the things that we would normally do. Some of the problems that can occur as a result of social isolation, your anxiety can be increased. One of the things that Donna talked about was the importance of minimizing how much you read or take in about the coronavirus. We certainly need to be educated, but sometimes, especially if you're in the house by yourself, listening to the news, reading the papers, or whatever you're reading, or whatever you're doing to get your information can be extremely overwhelming and can increase your anxiety. If there was a sense of anxiety, or you're the kind of person who tends to worry in general, this kind of situation certainly can enhance your sense of anxiety. Depression. It certainly can lead to some depressive symptoms. If you're an extrovert and you love to get out and be around people, and truly people that are extroverts, they find their energy in interacting with other people. An introvert, not so much, but the truth of the matter is whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we still need to connect with other people just to have that healthy sense of being alive and knowing that we matter to someone else. And again, to keep in mind, I said if you had a very healthy way of coping with situations before the virus, that certainly can determine how well you're going to do during this time. So if you have a history of anxiety or depression, those symptoms may be increased. If you've never been diagnosed with those symptoms, you certainly can experience those symptoms. And as an EAP counselor, I certainly am getting a lot of employees that are calling in who typically do not have anxiety, but they're complaining about having anxiety just because of the nature of their role in the hospital and their concern about what's going on with COVID-19. As the days go on, you may also have some problems with conflict. You may find that you're not as patient as you usually are. I'm currently working from home and I'm not used to my husband being home with me. And I got to tell you, it's frustrating. I much rather that he be out doing what he has to do and let me do my thing, but that's not my reality. And so, for those of us that are home with our family members, whether you're with your children, your mate, your grandchildren, whoever, it can be challenging. But if you're living alone and you're there by yourself every day, particularly if you're a senior, it's even more of a challenge because I'm 65 and I'm in that high risk category. So I have to make sure that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do to make sure that I'm safe and I'm protecting other people. But if you're living home by yourself and you cannot have contact for the obvious reasons, it makes it more of a challenge. Now, while you may not necessarily be in conflict with other people, you certainly can become angry about, I want to get out and do these things, but I don't have the ability. So your anger certainly can increase. I was talking about conflict, but conflict and anger kind of goes hand in hand. So if you tend to be very patient, you may find yourself losing patience with your family, with your friends, and oh my gosh, I'm having so many problems with just being comfortable dealing with IT. That's not my bag. That's just not what I do. And when it's not working, it's just so frustrating. I find myself one day I was ready to throw my phone or my computer. I didn't do it. I thought about it. But again, I'm just saying I'm someone who's usually composed. I'm the one who's telling people how to hold it together. And here I am feeling angry. So it's normal for all of us to have those feelings at any given moment because of the situation that we're in. Many people may become frightened as a result of the unknown and what we do know. And unfortunately, we're getting so much mixed communication that makes it challenging as well. And their answers, you have questions, no answers. Where do you get answers from? It's confusing. That certainly can increase your anxiety and make you very frightened. Frustrated. I just talked about being frustrated, just not being technically savvy and just not knowing how to get on to get in and do all the things that I need to do. And I was just sharing before we started, I had to do a presentation a couple of weeks ago. Everybody was in. I could not get in, and I was due to present. Oh my gosh, I was so upset and frustrated, but fortunately, my supervisor was a part of the session and he was able to present. There was nothing that I could do to make it any better. I tried every way that I could. It just didn't work. Being sad, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the depression and sometimes feeling angry. It's not unusual to be sad because of the circumstances, but because it's been so prolonged, this has been going on since March, and we don't have an end date at this point. And if you are living alone, don't have any family or friends that can really come in and see you or connect with you, that makes it very challenging. And oftentimes, people, especially if you're living alone, you feel like you're in it by yourself, that other people couldn't possibly understand what it is that you're going through because they have their family and friends around you. Next slide, please. Now I would like to talk a little bit about anxiety because that's one of the things that most people are experiencing, including myself. And while I tell folks to minimize how much they're watching the news and reading information about the virus, I have to tell that to myself as well. I know for myself, the more I read, the more upset I get, the more frustrated I become. So when I find myself overreacting, I know I've taken in too much, I have to pull back. So I just want to talk a little bit about some things that you can do. For you as an individual, avoid excessive exposure to media coverage. Connect through calls, text, and internet. Don has already said that, and I'll repeat that again. Add extra time for daily stress relief, whether it's taking a walk, taking a nice bubble bath, just reaching out and talking to someone. Practicing self-care, focusing on your mental health. I'm a big proponent of making sure that we practice self-care. It's extremely important. A client had called me the other day while I was working from home and I was in the middle of having lunch. I continued to have my lunch. I said, "Let me call you back in about 30 minutes," because I wanted the luxury of enjoying my lunch. I need that downtime just to kind of refresh my mind and relax my body so I'll be prepared to talk to the next person who I had to see. That's a part of self-care. For children, reassuring them that they are safe, let them talk about their worries, and share your own coping skills and limit their news exposure to what's going on and create a routine structure. All of these things that we're talking about for children, we certainly can do for ourselves as well. The last thing that I would like to share with regard to anxiety, if you're quarantined or in isolation, it is so important to stay in contact with your loved ones, whether it's social media, text, and phone calls. Create a daily self-care routine, however you define that. And whenever I do stress management presentations, I always ask people, what is it that you do to take care of yourself when you're well, when you're feeling healthy? And they will share A, B, or C. But when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when we're feeling depressed or feeling anxious, oftentimes we forget about the importance of doing those things that we really do enjoy, because for some of us, we tend to focus on the negative things that are going on in our life. Well, it's important no matter what the situation, the circumstances, to maintain good mental health, good physical health, good emotional health, because they're all interrelated. Next slide, please. Okay, stress and anxiety can increase during the pandemic when you, one, are adhering to staying at home, which is the mandate, or you're living alone. And as I've already stated, if you're living alone, particularly if you're a senior, your challenges are going to be very different than someone who's living with a family or friends or whatever the case may be. I've talked to so many clients who have senior parents who live in either senior buildings or they're in their own home, and they can't go in the house to actually see them or touch them. And that's very challenging. So if you're in the house by yourself and you've not had human touch for a while, that can be quite upsetting emotionally and physically. as I said earlier, we all need that human connection. So it's important that we're reaching out and talking to people. If you were the social butterfly and you love talking to your neighbor next door and participating in the card games or whatever it was that you enjoy doing, and now all of a sudden you can't do that, it's extremely upsetting to your way of life. That can affect you emotionally. It certainly can affect you physically. And this isn't just for seniors or anyone that's living by themselves, it's for any one of us. For me, I'm an introvert, but I enjoy going to get my hair done, getting my nails done, to the mall, all those things, or just seeing my family whenever I could. And oh, by the way, I'm a hugger. Oh my God, I love to hug people. Not being able to do that is a challenge for me. And so, one thing that really, really helps me is when I do my telehealth sessions, I get excited when I see my clients, whether it's a new person or someone that I don't know, because for me, it's a new day, it's a new person, a new face, and I just get excited. I can't hug you, but at least I can smile when I see your face. So, some of the tools that may help if you're living alone, I've already talked about keeping to a schedule, staying informed, and staying active, whether you're doing exercise in your apartment, around your house, around your complex. Remember, if you're going outside, to always wear your mask, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself to the best of your ability. Self compassion. What does that sound? What does that mean? Basically, self compassion is recognizing that everything that I just talked about, whether you're feeling sad, frustrated, depressed, anxious, all of those symptoms, all of those behaviors are normal, but it's about keeping it in perspective. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose your mind. It just means that you're having a normal reaction to something that is significantly abnormal. This is not something that many of us have been exposed to. My daughter in law works at home and she's been doing it for years. And I said to her, I could never understand how you do it. Well, now I'm being forced to do it. For her, it's a way of life. And right now, it's a way of life for all of us. Whether you're living with a family or whether you're living alone, it's a challenge. But it's remember to be gentle to yourself. If you're upset, recognize you're upset. If you're having thoughts about, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how long this is going to last. Am I going to get through it? That's all normal. But what I would say to you is to make sure that you're reaching out to your support system, letting someone know what you're feeling and what it is you're thinking can be very helpful just to have an opportunity to, again, connect with someone else while it's verbal. At least you're having an opportunity to share what it is that you're thinking or you're feeling. Doing something meaningful, you have to define what that is. For me, it's not talking on the phone all the time. It's like picking and choosing when I want to reach out and talk because I talk every day, all day. So just having that moment where I'm not talking is important, which is why it's helpful when my husband is out doing whatever he needs to do because he is a talker. Now, he would tell you all I'm the talker in the family. He's the extrovert, I'm the introvert, so I'd beg to differ. Connect with others, finding sources of comfort. I'm not originally from Baltimore, I'm from New York. So for me, my colleagues are very strong sense of support. My church family is a strong sense of support. And of course, reaching out to my family. Whatever your support system is just making sure that you're reaching out, letting them know what you're going through. If you're upset, if you're feeling alone, letting someone know, reaching out to your neighbors, talking to friends that live in your community. And maybe there's some way that you can start a support group with some of your friends. And you don't have to be I'm sorry, not politically savvy. You don't have to be tech savvy, but maybe there's a way that you can just decide how you can just walk by one another's house or apartment and just wave or something. I'm just trying to think a little bit outside of the box. But again, you have to define what meaningful is. I've been saying to people that I'm not quite sure what TikTok is. I've been seeing it, and it just looks like a great way to do an activity with your family and have fun. Well, I'm the introvert, and I want to do something like that because it's doing something with your family. And for me, that's important. So that's what I'm saying, trying to decide what it is that's meaningful you to do and just be creative. I've already talked about connecting with others can be a big source of support. Remember, I said, as human beings, it's important for us to connect with other people, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just having that connection makes all the difference in the world. Calling your family on a regular basis, reaching out to your children, your grandchildren, whoever your support system is. Once a week, we have a staff meeting, and that's important for me as a manager to see the faces of all of my staff members and colleagues. Because when you think about it, for those of us that work, the people that we work with, they're like a second family, and that second family can be just as valuable and important as our primary family. Asking for help. There is help in the community, but it's a matter of knowing where those resources are and reaching out. And the other thing is, when you're going through and you're having a hard time, but the moment you reach out and support someone else, it's as if you tend to forget what it is that you're going through because you're trying to be supportive and caring about someone else, and that goes a long way. So think about it. If you know someone that's going through while you're going through, you reach out, you're going to provide some support, some love, some care. That may translate to someone else and it's paying it forward. So again, just reaching out for support as you need to. It's important to notice and keep track in changes in your mental wellness and or the decline in your physical well-being because we have no idea how long this is going to last. And I want to say this, if you have a history of depression or anxiety, then you know what it's like to be on medication and having to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. But if you've never experienced these symptoms over a prolonged period of time, some symptoms of depression would include sadness, isolating, just not wanting to be around anybody, not wanting to talk to anyone. Maybe you're sleeping a little bit more or your sleep is impaired. You don't want to talk. You have no energy. It's difficult to concentrate. If you're having any of those symptoms, maybe for a week, I'm sorry, for 4 weeks to a month, not that unusual. But if you're having these symptoms over a prolonged period of time, it's at that point that you might want to consider talking to someone such as myself, your primary care doctor, and just making sure that everything is okay. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about self-care during a crisis. One of the things you want to do is you want to keep in touch. Keep in touch with your social support groups, whether it's family, church family, a reading group, a women's group, a men's group, whatever that support group may be. Support groups virtually, meaning your support groups through video. Social media, FaceTime, Skype. I've never been a big FaceTime person, but right now it's good to see because sometimes there's some wonderful things that are posted. One of the things that I love to see are the TV commercials where families and friends are posting all kinds of get well wishes to our care providers and anyone that are essential employees. That just makes me feel good when I see that kind of information. Um, Playing games and other digital platforms can be really helpful. I'm going to figure out how to do TikTok or Zoom so I can play a game with my family. Go. Go if the weather is nice. I love the spring. The spring doesn't love me. Since moving to Maryland, I have allergies and I'm allergic to pollen and all that stuff. But I love the trees. I love the grass. No, I don't love the grass. I love the flowers, just seeing the colors. So when you get a chance to get outside and see any of that, please experience it, but do it in a way that's safe for you. You don't want to be around too many people, and you certainly want to wear your mask. Getting outside and having some fresh air when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed can really help you to feel better. Exercising is another way that can help you to feel better. And of course, we're talking about social distancing. So maintaining that 6-foot distance from others is going to be important as well. The next topic says stay. Stay busy. And you don't want to be too busy because you don't want to overwhelm yourself. But you want to read, you want to play games, you want to work on a project, whatever that may be. My husband and I played a game a couple of weeks ago. We played the same game 3 times and I beat him 3 times. That was awesome. Decrease. You want to decrease the time you spend watching or listening to upsetting media coverage. That can be very overwhelming. Certainly, you want to be educated and you want to know what's going on, but take it in small doses. If you're someone who tends to worry and be overly concerned, this is not the time to consume as much information as you possibly can because it can be overwhelming and it can increase your anxiety or your depression. The next area says draw. Draw on your skills that you've used during other difficult times to get to manage your emotions. I think this is a really important topic, and I like to tell clients that sometimes when you've been through a rough patch and you've gotten through, during that crisis, you didn't have any idea how you were going to get through or that you were going to get through. What I encourage people to do is focus on today. Part of anxiety is worrying about the unknown, the what ifs, and if this happens, if that happens. We can't predict that. We don't know what it's going to be like. All that you can do is manage what's in front of you today. And every one of us, I don't care how young you are, how old you are, you've been through something in life, and some people have had more challenges than other. If that's the case, you know what it means to survive. You know what it means to get over and to get through. And I always encourage people to use your resources. Some people tend to keep to themselves and keep things bottled up. That doesn't work and it's not healthy. And I'm not saying to tell everyone what it is you're going through. Sometimes we just need 1 or 2 people that we can open up and truly share what we're really feeling or thinking, and knowing that person is not going to judge us or not condemn us for whatever it is we're thinking and we're feeling. So again, just remembering to use your resources and recognizing that I do have that inner strength, that I am capable of getting through. You don't have to get through alone. You have support systems that are out there. And this is what I tell our employees all the time. Please feel free, if you're going through, to recognize that we have this program available to you. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is called mindfulness. And that's what deep breathing, maybe doing some exercise or yoga is all about. I cannot tell you the number of times of the past several weeks, how many times I've had to encourage clients to just stop, don't talk, just focus on breathing. Because oftentimes with anxiety, we're up in our head overthinking the what ifs, if this happens, if that happens. When you're doing that, you're not getting in the oxygen that you need. Therefore, many people start to hyperventilate. Some people start having some heaviness in their chest or their hands get sweaty. This is all usual symptoms from becoming anxious. So what I'm telling people to do, stop thinking about whatever you're thinking about. Focus on breathing. And I help them to go through the breathing technique. And what I do is I tell them, stop thinking about whatever it is you're thinking about. Get comfortable. Your feet are on the ground, your arms and your legs are down to your side. You're going to take a deep breath from the bottom of your stomach. You take a deep breath. And you blow out very slowly through your mouth. And I may have them do this about 3 or 5 times just to get them to calm down physically and to calm down emotionally. And for many people, it does work. I also tell people, when you find that you're constantly rethinking something over and over again, just imagine you're at a stop sign. You see the stop, you don't go past. You don't go past stop, you just stop. And sometimes it's telling yourself, no, I don't have to think about this. I'm safe. I'm not in harm's way. I really am okay. And reassuring yourself that way. This is what mindfulness looks like, and is having that self-talk, telling yourself, I'm okay. And if you need to reach out and talk to someone, please feel free to do that as well. The last thing is maintain a healthy lifestyle, staying hydrated, eating nutritious meals, exercising, getting enough sleep, resting when you have to rest. For those of us that are still working while this is going on, whether we're physically going to work or we're working from home, we need to do all of those things. But while you're at work, whether it's home or in the workplace, take a break, whether you go and just walk around just to kind of clear your mind of whatever it is that you're doing or you're thinking about. Taking a lunch break is so important during the course of the day, whether we're in a crisis or not, because those of us that are working, I don't care whether you're working at home, whether you work here in the hospital, wherever. It's just so important that you're just not totally committing yourself to 8, 10 hours a day going nonstop without taking a break. That's not good on you emotionally. It's not good on you physically. It's not good on you socially. So remembering to take a break. Be gentle with yourself. For those folks who are type A and love to get everything done and you create a list and say, I need to do A through Z, that's not going to happen. It doesn't have to happen. We're not in our usual world as we once knew it. So we have to look at our life today for the way that it is today, not the way we want it to be, the way that it is today. Next slide. Okay, self-care during the coronavirus crisis. I'm going to have to look at my slide because it's too small for me to see. So, one, avoid using tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs to cope with your emotions. That never works. Am I saying don't drink? Am I saying not to smoke a cigarette? Absolutely not. But I'm saying to you want to be careful because if there's a tendency to overindulge because because you're feeling nervous or anxious, there's always that possibility that you can start using more. All of those depressive and anxiety symptoms that I was talking about earlier will most definitely be exacerbated if by chance you are drinking a little bit more or using any kind of illicit drugs. You do want to access information that can help you to cope with your stress. So whether you reach out to a counselor, a mental health provider, your doctor, a pastor, whoever you feel can give you the support that you need, absolutely reach out. You want to access that information to help you to cope with your stress in case you're worried or feeling confused during this pandemic. And this information I was able to get from Magellan Health. It was a great resource, and I really enjoyed looking at the material. The last thing that I want to encourage you to do is to get the facts about your risk and how to take precaution. Some of us, and this is the thing the news is saying for those of us that are 65 and older with health care, situations we're at higher risk. I assume that's very true, but we also know that there have been some younger adults that have died. So we don't know how it impacts each and every person, but you know what's going on with you. Be educated about what's happening to you individually. If you have family members that you're concerned about, help them to get the information that they may need. Take the precautions that you need to. Use trusted national and international resources, including the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control. I know at the end of this presentation, Donna has a list of other resources that are available out there in the community. I think this is my last, no, I have one more slide. The last thing that I want to read is a little meditation that I found a couple of weeks ago. It's called Hope. If you only carry one thing throughout your entire life, let it be hope. Let it be hope that better things are always ahead. Let it be hope that you can get through even the toughest of times. Let it be hope that you are stronger than any challenge that comes your way. Let it be hope that you are exactly where you are meant to be right now and that you are on a path to where you are meant to be. Because during these times, hope will be the very thing that carries you through. And that was written by Nikki Barnes. Thank you so much.
Wanda, thank you so very much. And thank you, uh, especially for that message of hope. Very important that will carry us through, I'm sure. And as well, thank you for all the wonderful tips that you gave along the way. For everyone, I'd like to just share a few resources. And if you don't have a screen in front of you and can't see these, rest assured I'll give you a website where you can get all of this information. There's quite a bit up here, so some of you may even want to just take a screenshot of it, your choice. Wanda spoke first about older adults and the impact that isolation may have on them. So we have a number of resources pertaining to our elders. One is, of course, the AARP, Association of Retired Persons. The Maryland Department of Aging has a great deal of information available for local jurisdictions and counties, as well the Administration of Community Living and the National Council on Aging. Additionally, on the next slide, we'll see a series of resources that relate generally to mental health and wellness. Next slide, please. There's quite a lot on here. You can always call the Maryland 211 line for basic information. They have a lot that is there, including information about testing, information about symptoms that you may be suffering with COVID, etc. There's always NAMI here in Maryland, the Maryland chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. The Maryland Department of Health has a very replete website on coronavirus with additional information and a specific subset of it related to the deaf and hard of hearing. If you have interest or concerns about child abuse, you can always go to the Maryland Children's Alliance, that is Maryland Children's Alliance. For domestic violence, there are a number of resources, but one that we've listed here is the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence. There you can find a list of resources by county where you can get help and information. The CDC has a extensive website. They even have a link within where you can take a test of your own symptoms if you want to consider that. Substance abuse and mental health resources are at SAMHSA, and then of course the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Next slide, please. The University of Maryland Medical System set up a 24/7 nurse call line, and that number, in case you don't have it before you, is 1-888-713-0711. You can call anytime during the day for information. Many people do about their own symptoms and can get resources and access through that nurse call line. And again, the website that UMS has devoted to coronavirus is ums.org, our regular website, /coronavirus. Next slide, please. At this point, we can take your questions and provide some answers for you. I have a question from last week, actually from Tuesday, Wanda, that I saved for today, and it says, it's really a comment and not a question, but you may have comments in regard to it. Self-isolation is especially difficult when you live alone and don't have family physically with you. I think I would be better if I had family living with me. I hear how difficult and all the complaints about homeschooling kids, but that sounds wonderful to me.
I think, you know how we oftentimes think it's always greener on the other side? We don't know until we're in that person's shoes. But I've heard from both sides of the fence, those that are home with children and the challenge that it is, particularly if you're a single parent and you don't have someone to really assist you with those children and you're working from home. So that's one side. But on the other side, you're in the house by yourself and you would love to have some company, but you can't. And so this is one of the things I think that we do when we start speculating, well, my life would be better if I was able to do this, if I was able to do that. But the reality is we're in the situation that we're in, not because of anything that we've necessarily done wrong, but it's just to recognize whatever situation that you're in, to try to make the best of it. And most importantly, particularly if you're living by yourself, is please, please reach out to family and friends just to let them know how you're feeling and what's going on. And you know what? It's so important to be honest about how you're feeling. So when they call you and say, okay, Miss Alice, how are you doing? Don't just say, "Oh, baby, I'm okay." Be honest and say, "You know what? I'm really concerned. It's scary living here by myself while we have this pandemic going on." So just don't be scared to allow to share your emotions with other people. And at the end, there's no easy way to answer. How do you cope when you're in a household with family and children versus if you're living by yourself? The reality is it's not easy either way, but reaching out for support no matter what your living situation may be.
Here's a question that says, I'm trying to adjust to being physically distant from my family and friends and from not participating in social activities, and I feel a sense of loss. I actually feel like I am grieving. Is this normal?
Oh my gosh, that is such an excellent point because you are grieving, and many ways, many of us are. We're grieving the loss of what used to be normal for us. It used to be we could go across the hall and have a cup of coffee with our friend or go hang out to the movies and do the various things that we enjoy doing. That sense of life as we once knew it has been distorted, has been taken away. And while hopefully, prayerfully, it's just temporary, but right now it is our lifestyle. So, yes, you're absolutely right. It is a form of grieving. The only difference is hopefully it's not something that's going to last indefinitely, but for the period of time that we're going through it, we are going to be grieving the loss of doing the things that we used to do and being with our family and friends. That's an excellent point.
Here's a question. This one is very specific. I'm not sure that we know the answer, and if we don't, perhaps we can get the answer. It says, I'm a hospital chaplain. Fairfax County is offering chaplain help virtually to anyone. Is this being done in Maryland?
That's a good question, and that I'm not sure about. That's an excellent question.
All right, we'll try to find that out. I've got another one here. It says, some days my energy is very low and I don't get much accomplished. I worry that I'm suffering from depression. At what point should I reach out to my doctor?
Okay, well, couple of things. One, you want to make sure that physically you're really okay because sometimes we may really have some physical symptoms and you may think it's psychological and it's not. So, one, you want to make sure that physically you're okay. If you're having this symptom and nothing else, I cannot diagnose because I don't know what else could be going on. But what I would say to you, if you find that you're having this symptom, perhaps other symptoms for at least 4 weeks or longer, at that point, you really may consider talking to your primary care doc just to make sure that physically everything is okay. If he or she is ruled out, there's nothing physiologically going on, then chances are is stress. It could be a form of depression.
I have two more questions here. I lost a loved one to COVID. She died in the hospital. I was not able to say goodbye. I feel so guilty. What can I do?
Um, the last question was about grieving, and when you actually lose someone, that makes it very real. And unfortunately, this morning I just found out that I lost a former brother-in-law, and I feel badly because I can't get up there to be with my niece to support her. But the reality is, I know that I'm limited as to what I can do. And that's what I would say to you is recognize right now we have limitations as to what we can do. If we didn't have this going on, more than likely you would be able to reach out and do whatever you can to support your family member or your friend. To feel guilty, it's normal. But again, it's about putting it in perspective. We're restricted as to what we can do or what we would like to do. And this is how you have to find other ways to be creative to support family and friends, but to recognize it's not that you intentionally don't want to be there, you just can't. And recognize, please don't beat up on yourself because there's not a lot that you can do. You do what you can, and we just have to be able to cope with that.
Sorry for your loss. I've got one here that says, I cry all day or periodically throughout the day. This has never happened to me before. Should I worry about it?
Only if it's the same as the person was saying that he or she has no energy. If it's impacting you getting up and doing what you have to do, you're not eating, it's hard for you to concentrate, I certainly would encourage you to reach out to your primary care doctor. If you have a therapist or a mental health provider that you talk to, certainly reach out to them to make sure that everything is okay.
Okay. Oh, now they're coming in like crazy. Um, let me do this because we're really out of time. Let's go to the last slide, and let me say that I have a question here that says, my sister lives in New York, and I think she would really benefit from this talk. How can she access the recorded sessions? Let me let everyone know that, again, this is the third of 3 sessions that we've done related to COVID and mental health. This session will be up within about 48 hours. The other 2, one which was on protecting your mental health and the second which was on helping children cope in this time, are already posted. And the website for you to find all of these is ums.org/coronavirus/message community mental, mental health conversation. You'll be able to see all of that, and we'll work on providing answers to questions that we were not able to get to. There is a request, Wanda. People really like that hope slide as well, that we flash that one back up. So if we could get back to that slide and just leave that up at the end. And while we're looking
Sure.
for that, let me just say thank you, Wanda, so very much for the time you've taken today. Again, sorry for your loss. This makes it all very real for every single one of us, but we certainly so much appreciate your expertise and all that you've shared with every one of us today. And I want to say thank you to all who have joined us here, not only today, but on the 2 prior days for these Not All Wounds Are Visible webinars. Thank you all so much and really
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful day.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.